A deep silence hung over the bridge of the Zalari warship as Commander Vexer stared at the swirling blue-green planet below. Earth. A world of primitives, weak creatures that had barely scratched the surface of space travel. Their weapons were crude, their fleets laughably small. Yet, despite their inferiority, they had defied the Zalari Empire. They had refused to surrender. They had fought back. Vexer clenched his mandibles, his dark eyes narrowing. This was supposed to be a simple conquest, a mere formality before claiming yet another resource-rich planet. And yet, in every battle, the humans had done something that made no sense. They refused to fight by logic. They didn't retreat when outnumbered, didn't surrender when overwhelmed. Instead, they adapted. They learned. They fought with a desperation Vexer had never seen before. The Zalari were a race of conquerors, their strategies built on precision and calculated efficiency. When they encountered a weaker species, they overwhelmed them quickly and moved on. But humans? They didn't break. They didn't submit. Instead, they seemed to become stronger with every defeat. They turned their losses into lessons, their failures into weapons. It was unsettling. A soft chime echoed through the bridge as an officer turned toward Vexer. "Commander, our fleet is in position. The final assault is ready to commence." Vexer exhaled sharply. "Launch the attack. Crush them before they become more of a problem." Across Earth's orbit, Zalari warships descended in perfect formation, their sleek black hulls gliding through the sky like birds of prey. Energy cannons hummed as they powered up, targeting human strongholds with unerring precision. On the ground, alarms blared as Earth's forces scrambled to defend themselves. Fighters launched into the sky, missiles streaked upward, and anti-air defenses roared to life. And then, something happened that shouldn't have been possible. The Zalari's advanced targeting systems flickered. Sensors went offline. The perfectly calibrated energy shields began to fluctuate. The entire fleet, built on the backbone of superior technology, was suddenly vulnerable. Vexer's mandibles clicked in frustration. "Report. What is happening?" The officer's voice was tight with panic. "Commander, the humans, they've hacked us." Vexer's blood ran cold. Impossible. But it wasn't. Across the fleet, human cyberattacks tore through the Zalari's systems like a plague. These so-called primitives had found a weakness, a flaw in their technology that even the Zalari themselves had overlooked. And they had exploited it mercilessly. Then came the real nightmare. One by one, the Zalari warships lost control. Engines misfired, shields collapsed, weapon systems turned against their own fleets. And in the chaos, the humans struck. Not with brute force, not with sheer numbers, but with something far more terrifying. They adapted. Earth's forces moved in perfect synchronization, capitalizing on every moment of confusion. They boarded Zalari ships, their soldiers fighting with a ferocity that defied reason. Zalari warriors, trained for calculated battles, found themselves overwhelmed, not by superior firepower, but by the sheer, unrelenting will of human resistance. Vexer's eyes darted across the failing systems of his ship. "Activate emergency withdrawal. We must regroup." But it was too late. The humans had already boarded his vessel. The security doors buckled under the force of an explosion, and as smoke filled the air, figures stepped through, armored, determined, eyes burning with a relentless fire. Vexer had always believed his kind to be the apex of evolution, the pinnacle of warfare. But as he stared into the eyes of the human soldier who raised their weapon, he realized something chilling. The Zalari hadn't invaded a weak species. They had provoked the most dangerous force in the galaxy. And now, they would face the consequences. Vexer's mandibles twitched as he took a step back, his claws tightening into fists. The human soldier stood motionless for a moment, their weapon trained on him. The smoke drifted through the air, casting eerie shadows across the bridge. Behind the soldier, more humans poured in, their faces grim, their movements precise. These weren't mindless warriors. They weren't savages. They were something far worse. They were prepared. A flickering alarm pulsed through the ship, the red glow casting everything in an ominous light. Vexer could feel the tremors in the floor beneath him. His warship, the pride of the Zalari fleet, was no longer under his control. He clenched his jaw. How had it come to this? The human soldier finally spoke, their voice calm yet filled with something unfamiliar. Something Vexer couldn't quite understand. "You thought we were weak," they said, taking a slow step forward. "You thought we'd break." Vexer straightened, his pride refusing to let him show fear. "Your kind should not have been able to do this," he he said, his voice a low growl. You lack the technology, the knowledge. The soldier cut him off. Maybe, but we learn fast. That was the part Vexer had never accounted for. In all his years of conquest, no species had ever been like this. Other civilizations fought with strength or numbers, some with clever tactics. But humans? They adapted. They refused to stay the same enemy twice. Every battle was different. Every loss was a lesson. And now, they had learned enough to turn the war against the Zalari themselves. The officer beside Vexer let out a sharp hiss, his claws twitching as he took an aggressive stance. You dare to invade a Zalari vessel? He spat. You are outnumbered. The human soldier tilted their head slightly, as if considering the words. Then, to Vexer's shock, they smirked. Are we? At that moment, an explosion rocked the ship. The lights flickered and distant shouts echoed through the halls. More human soldiers were breaching other sections of the warship. They weren't just here to fight. They were here to take the ship. Vexer felt something he hadn't experienced in a long time, doubt. The Zalari Empire had always won through superior force, through strategy refined over generations. But against these humans, it was different. Their tactics changed too quickly, their responses unpredictable. And worst of all, they never fought alone. Through the smoke, a second human soldier entered, holding a small device. They pressed a button, and suddenly, the ship's intercom crackled to life. A voice, clear and filled with controlled authority, echoed through the warship. This is Captain Elias Carter of the United Earth Defense Force. Your fleet is compromised. Your ship belongs to us now. Surrender, and you will be treated fairly. Vexer's claws tightened. Surrender? The very idea was unthinkable. The Zalari did not surrender. They were the ones who demanded it from others. Yet, as he looked around, he realized just how dire the situation had become. The humans weren't fighting to survive anymore. They were fighting to win. His officer turned to him, waiting for orders. Vexer hesitated for the first time in his life. His instincts screamed at him to keep fighting, to retaliate. But logic told him otherwise. The humans had already done the impossible. They had turned the Zalari's own technology against them. They had broken into the most secure ship in the fleet. And now they were giving Vexer a choice. But was it truly a choice? Another explosion rattled the warship, and Vexer knew deep down that this battle was already lost. But the war? That was another matter. Humans had proven to be unlike any enemy the Zalari had ever faced. If they had the power to do this, then the Empire needed to rethink everything. Vexer straightened, his gaze meeting the humans. There was no fear in their eyes, no hesitation. Just resolve. This wasn't over. Not yet. Vexer's mind raced as the reality of the situation sank in. The humans had done more than just breach his ship. They had shattered the illusion of Zalari superiority. He could see it in the eyes of his crew, the way their rigid discipline had begun to crack, the unspoken fear creeping into their posture. This was not how battles were supposed to go. The Zalari crushed their enemies with overwhelming force, left no room for resistance. Yet here they were, standing in their own warship, forced to negotiate with an enemy they had underestimated. The human soldier kept their weapons steady, eyes locked on Vexer as if waiting for his next move. Every second that passed made the weight of the decision press down on him harder. Surrender? No. He refused to entertain the thought. But fighting? That was no longer a simple option either. His warship, the heart of this fleet, was compromised. More humans were spreading through the corridors, disabling security systems, cutting off reinforcements. The Zalari crew was being forced into smaller and smaller sections of the ship, their ability to retaliate slipping away like sand through his claws. A flicker of movement in the shadows caught his attention. His officer, still tense, barely perceptibly reached for his concealed blade. Vexer didn't move, but he knew what was about to happen. A last-ditch attempt. A desperate strike against the human standing before them. It wouldn't work, and yet, something inside him almost wanted to let it play out, to see if this soldier truly was as unshakable as they seemed. Before the officer could lunge, the human soldier spoke again, their voice calm but firm. I wouldn't. The officer froze, the faintest tremor betraying his hesitation. Vexer realized the human hadn't even glanced at him. They had simply known, as if they could predict what was coming next, as if they had seen this kind of desperation before. That was what unsettled him the most. These humans weren't fighting on instinct alone. They were reading the battlefield, reading him, understanding his people faster than he could comprehend theirs. They had studied the Zalari, adapted to their patterns. What else had they learned? How much further had they already planned ahead? A sudden burst of static interrupted his thoughts as a voice crackled through the human soldier's earpiece. We've secured engineering. Their failsafe protocols are down. Fleet Command is patching in now. Vexor's blood chilled. The humans weren't just taking this ship. They were cutting it off from the entire fleet. His empire, the vast network of warships and planetary strongholds, would soon see the truth. That this battle, which should have been a decisive victory, had turned into a catastrophe. The human soldier's expression didn't change. You're out of time, Commander, they said. Make your choice. Vexor took a slow breath, his thoughts racing for another way out. The humans had the upper hand here, but what about the larger war? They had proven themselves formidable, but they were still small in number compared to the might of the Zalari Empire. If he could escape, if he could warn High Command, help them understand what kind of enemy they were truly facing, perhaps there was still a way to turn the tide. But escape wasn't so simple anymore. He had underestimated humans once. He wouldn't do it again. Elsewhere on the ship, battles still raged. His remaining forces were fighting to reclaim control, but the pattern was clear. The humans weren't engaging in reckless firefights. They were precise, calculated, disabling systems rather than destroying them. They weren't here to burn the ship down. They were here to take it whole. That was what troubled Vexor the most. This wasn't just a victory for them. This was a message. A deep tremor ran through the warship, and the distant hum of the engines shifted. The humans had done something. He could feel it in the very walls of the ship. He turned toward the soldier, narrowing his gaze. What have you done? For the first time, the human's expression shifted just slightly. We've reprogrammed your jump drive, they said. Your ship isn't going back to your fleet. It's going to Earth. Vexor stiffened. Earth. The humans weren't just fighting for survival anymore. They were pulling his people into a battlefield of their choosing. And that, more than anything, made him realize just how dangerous they truly were. He had thought this was a simple war. But humans never played by the rules. And now, for the first time in his life, he wasn't sure who would win. Vexor's claws dug into the cold metal of the bridge console as the reality of the situation sank in. His warship, the pride of the Zalari fleet, was no longer under his control. The humans had done the unthinkable. They had not only taken his ship, but had set a course for Earth, the very planet he had sought to conquer. A quiet dread settled in his chest. This was no longer a battle. This was a statement. A warning. The human soldier still stood before him, unwavering. Their people had infiltrated the most secure sections of the warship, dismantling his forces piece by piece. Every attempt to retake control had been met with swift countermeasures, as if the humans had anticipated each move before it was even made. Vexor had spent his life studying warfare, believing the Zalari were the ultimate strategists. Yet, in mere hours, these humans had turned his own tactics against him. Another tremor ran through the ship. The engines groaned as the jump drive began its final sequence. His officer, still rigid with disbelief, finally spoke. Commander, we must override the navigation. We cannot. No, Vexor interrupted, his voice low. He was watching the human soldier carefully now, searching for some sign of weakness, some indication that they weren't as confident as they appeared. But there was nothing, only determination. The officer turned to him, confused. Sir? Vexor exhaled slowly. They wouldn't have left us that option. The human gave a small nod, confirming his suspicion. Your command codes are locked out. Any attempt to tamper with the navigation will trigger a full lockdown. The officer let out a low hiss of frustration, his claws twitching. Vexor understood his anger, but he also knew something his officer did not. This battle was already beyond them. They weren't dealing with a mindless enemy. The humans had already won this phase, and now the real war was beginning. Through the viewing window, the stars blurred as the jump drive engaged. They were moving now, hurtling toward Earth, and there was nothing the Zalari forces could do to stop it. Vexor had never felt so powerless. A voice crackled through the ship's intercom once more, Captain Elias Carter. Commander Vexor, your people may still survive this. But only if you start listening. Vexor turned toward the nearest control panel, his claws hovering over the inactive systems. He could see the security feeds displaying the rest of his ship. His warriors were being pushed back, their formations breaking. There were no executions, no unnecessary destruction. The humans weren't here for slaughter. They were here for something far more dangerous. Control. He had spent his entire career ensuring the Zalari Empire dominated the weaker races. He had never considered that one day, another species might turn that same strategy against them. He shifted his gaze back to the human soldier. "Why?" he asked, his voice quieter than before. "You could have destroyed us. Why take the ship?" The soldier studied him for a moment before responding. "Because wars aren't won by destruction," they said. "They're won by taking away the enemy's ability to fight." Vexor felt his claws tighten. That was exactly what he had believed. That was what the Zalari had done to countless civilizations before. But now, for the first time, he was the one on the other side. The ship shuddered as they neared the final phase of the jump. In moments, they would be at Earth's doorstep. The Zalari fleet would see this, would know their flagship had fallen into enemy hands. Panic would ripple through the Empire. His people would never forgive him for this failure. But was it truly a failure? Or had he simply been blind to the reality of what humans were capable of? Vexor exhaled slowly, his mind racing. He could still fight. He could still resist. But every move he made, the humans had already countered. And now, for the first time, he wondered if surrendering wasn't weakness, but survival. The ship lurched as the final phase of the jump completed. The stars steadied. Earth loomed before them. And Vexor knew the moment of reckoning had come. The warship drifted into Earth's orbit, its dark silhouette casting a shadow against the planet's blue expanse. Vexor stared at the sight before him, his mind racing. He had always seen this planet as nothing more than a target, a primitive world that would fall like so many before it. But now, standing aboard his own captured vessel, he realized something unsettling. He was the one being delivered. A deep rumble echoed through the hull as the ship adjusted its course. The humans had full control now. His crew, what remained of them, were contained in secured compartments, their weapons stripped away, their communications severed. The Zalari Empire would be watching, their sensors locked onto the flagship. What would they see? Their proud commander, standing powerless in the hands of the very species he was supposed to conquer. The human soldier beside him pressed a device on their wrist. "We've arrived. Signal command." A voice crackled through the intercom, but this time, it wasn't from Captain Carter. It was someone else. "Confirmed. Stand by for override." "Override?" Vexor's mandibles twitched with unease. He turned to the human soldier. "What does that mean?" The soldier hesitated, as if weighing their words. "It means we're not the only ones who have been planning this." Before he could demand an explanation, the ship's controls flickered. The navigation systems, previously locked down by the humans, suddenly shifted. New coordinates appeared, calculations adjusting. A sharp, artificial tone pulsed through the bridge, an alert he recognized instantly. The ship was preparing to jump again. But not back to Zalari space. Not to Earth's surface. Somewhere else. Vexor's mind reeled. The humans had fought to take this ship, to bring it to Earth. Why change the plan now? What was this new destination? The soldier tapped their earpiece. "Command, verify destination." A tense pause. Then the response came, a voice colder than before. "We're taking him to the station. Orders from higher up." Vexor's claws curled. This wasn't just about capturing him. This was bigger. The human soldier's expression darkened. For the first time, he saw something close to uncertainty in their face. They hadn't expected this either. The ship's engines flared, the gravity shift signaling the start of the next jump. Vexor turned to the soldier, his voice low. "Where are you taking me?" The soldier didn't answer right away. Then, after a moment, they exhaled. "To meet someone who knows exactly what your kind has done." The ship trembled as space distorted around them. The blue expanse of Earth vanished, replaced by the endless black of deep space. And before them, emerging from the void, was something Vexor had never seen before. A structure, massive and ominous, suspended in the abyss. It was not human. It was not Zalari. And the moment Vexor saw it, he understood. This war was far from over. Vexor stared at the massive station looming before them, its dark, angular design unlike anything he had ever encountered. It was neither human nor Zalari, yet the sheer size of it sent a chill through him. Whoever had built this place had power that neither species seemed to fully understand. The humans had fought to take his ship, had rerouted their mission at the last moment, and now they were bringing him here. The question burned in his mind. Why? The ship's automated systems took over as it approached the docking bay. A deep, resonating pulse vibrated through the hull, as if the station itself was scanning them. The human soldier beside him remained quiet, but their grip tightened on their weapon. For the first time, Vexor saw the unease in their stance. They weren't in control anymore. Whoever was waiting for them inside the station was calling the shots now. The docking clamps engaged with a sharp hiss. The doors slid open, revealing a dimly lit corridor lined with strange, intricate patterns that pulsed with faint energy. The air felt charged, almost alive. Vexor hesitated, his instincts screaming that this was not just another human outpost. This was something far older, far more deliberate. A voice echoed from deeper inside. It was calm, precise, and filled with a weight that made even the human soldier stiffen. "Bring him in." They stepped forward cautiously, moving through the passageways that seemed to shift subtly, as if adapting to their presence. Vexor had faced countless enemies, had stood before war councils and execution chambers. But something about this place made his skin crawl. The Zalari were supposed to be the superior race. They had conquered, subjugated, destroyed. Yet standing here, for the first time, he felt small. They entered a vast chamber, its ceiling disappearing into darkness. At its center stood a figure, tall, humanoid, but unlike any species Vexor had encountered. Their form shimmered as if layered between dimensions, their eyes glowing with a deep, unnatural intelligence. The human soldier tensed. "We brought him as ordered. Now tell us, who are you?" The figure tilted its head slightly, studying them. "Who I am is irrelevant. What matters is what he has done." Their gaze locked onto Vexor. "And what is yet to come?" A deep hum resonated through the chamber, and suddenly, the walls illuminated with moving images. Scenes of war, of destruction, of entire civilizations erased from existence. Vexor's own fleet appeared among them, glassing planets, annihilating resistance. But then the images shifted. A new war. One that hadn't happened yet. Zalari ships burning. Human worlds falling. And something else, something massive lurking at the edges of known space. A force neither human nor Zalari, waiting in the darkness. Vexor's breath caught as he realized the truth. The Zalari had believed themselves to be the ultimate conquerors, and the humans had believed they were fighting to survive. But both species had been blind. There was something far worse out there, something watching, waiting for them to weaken each other. The figure's voice cut through the silence. "You thought you were the hunters, but you were only ever prey." Vexor turned to the human soldier, and for the first time he saw it in their eyes, the same fear that gripped his own kind. The war between their species had been a mistake. The real enemy had yet to reveal itself. The station rumbled, as if responding to the revelation. The figure stepped closer. "Now you must decide. Will you keep fighting each other? Or will you prepare for what's coming?" Vexor had spent his life believing in the Zalari's dominance, in their right to rule. But now, standing in the shadow of something far greater, he realized the truth. They had wasted their strength on the wrong enemy. And if they didn't change course, neither species would survive what was coming next. The war was over, but the real battle was only beginning. Vexor stood motionless, the weight of the revelation settling deep into his core. His entire life had been driven by conquest, by the belief that the Zalari were the ultimate force in the universe. But now, staring at the shifting images of destruction, some past, some future, he understood how blind he had been. The humans were never the real threat. Neither were the Zalari. They were both pieces in a game they hadn't even known they were playing. The human soldier at his side exhaled slowly, their grip on their weapon loosening. There was no point in fighting anymore. Not here. Not after this. They turned to Vexor, studying him, searching for something in his expression. Trust. Understanding? Maybe just the simple acknowledgement that everything had changed. Vexor met their gaze and gave a slow nod. It was not surrender. It was something else. A silent agreement. The figure before them remained still, waiting. The station itself felt alive, pulsing with energy, as if it too was watching, listening. The images around them flickered once more, showing glimpses of different possibilities. A future where humans and Zalari continued their war, and were wiped out in the process. A future where they stood together, their combined forces holding the line against whatever lay beyond the void. Vexor's voice was quieter than before. "What are they?" The figure's glow pulsed faintly. "A force older than either of your species. They wait for civilizations to weaken themselves. Then they strike. You are at the tipping point." The soldier clenched their jaw. "And if we choose to fight together?" The chamber dimmed, as if the station itself was considering the question. Then, for the first time, the figure moved closer. "Then you may have a chance." The words lingered in the air, heavy with meaning. Vexor's mind raced. He had spent his life preparing for war, but never like this. Fighting humans had been a matter of strategy, of politics. This was survival. He had been raised to see humans as lesser, as obstacles in the Zalari's path to dominance. But now, standing beside one, he realized they were the only ones who could stand with him against what was coming. The human soldier let out a breath, then reached up and tapped their earpiece. "Captain, you getting this?" A brief pause, then Carter's voice crackled through. Loud and clear. Vexor's claws twitched. His own people would be listening too. The Zalari High Command would see his position, hear his words. He knew what they would think. That he had been broken. That he was speaking under human control. But that didn't matter anymore. He turned toward the soldier and spoke loud enough for both their commanders to hear. "We will meet. Face to face. No weapons. No fleets. Just the truth." The soldier hesitated, then nodded. Agreed. The figure watched them for a long moment, then the images around them faded. The pulsing hum of the station quieted. The message had been received. The choice had been made. The journey back was silent. Vexor stood at the viewing window of his ship, staring into the vastness of space. The war between their species was over. But the battle ahead would test them in ways neither could yet imagine. For the first time in his life, he wasn't thinking about victory. He was thinking about survival. And for the first time, he understood what it meant to fight for something greater than power.